the word. I would stay at home and work. I've said that.
Okay.
People are going to have different opinions on that, and that is 100% okay with me. Boss babe, it is.
Wait, sorry, boss babe it is? What do you mean?
Yeah, they can call me that. It's great.
Oh, okay. All right. He follows up by saying, I will ask the famous Andrew question. If men are supposed to be providers and protectors to not only their family, but to provide society something significant as their duty, what duties do women bring? What do you women bring to the table? Are you virgins? If not...
Actually, this is a fantastic question brought up by Beaten Cheeks. So he's asking this, and maybe we can go around the panel on this. If it is the case that men's job in society is to procure resources, so think of it from a bird's eye view. The whole world's a bunch of warring tribes, which is exactly what it is, between different nations, countries, things like this. If it's the men's job to procure resources, refine resources, distribute resources, and it is their job to defend the nation and defend the social security inside of the nation, so the security of all people. What is the equal role that women have in society to that? That's his question. It's a good question for the panel.
Yeah, why don't we start, we'll start on this side. What do you think?
I don't know. To be honest, I believe like from the dawn of time, we're gatherers, they're hunters. We're supposed to just be at home. And I mean, I love traditional wives. Abigail, respect. I want your life. I want the life. Honestly, yeah, because once I get married and I have kids, I truly believe because I chose that man and I already know his mindset enough to like choose him. So I need to trust him because obviously that's why I chose him. I would not just get with the man that I did not trust. So I mean, yeah, blind's eye view. Like I would just kind of respect him all the way because I got to know him before we married.
Hang on, Chair One. What about to the question, though? What is the equal responsibility to society that is equal
to society
set down for men? The equal responsibility that women have to that responsibility they laid out that men have. What is the equal one that women have?
I guess just keeping the home, keeping the kids, keeping everything stable on that side.
All right, let's get somebody else. Go ahead. What about you?
I would say it's nurturing, raising a family, teaching kids good principles, good morals, teaching them about the Bible. I think that's really important, as well as not providing, sorry, people would blame me, like cooking, taking care of the home as well. But overall, just ensuring the well-being of husband, kids, and the home. But men have to match up to that life as well. And I feel like that's also something in modern day that we do not see a lot. And so...
Okay.
In a perfect world, it's easy to talk about, here's the line, let's divide it, but It's not always that way.
True.
No, I agree with you guys that motherhood is absolutely an amazing gift and something that is obviously essential to society. Obviously, not every woman, though, is called to be mother. Some women never get married, and that doesn't mean that they are less valuable to society. And so you can absolutely still provide amazing value to the world as not a mother. But I do agree that motherhood is a amazing thing, amazing gift.
So motherhood would be what you would say would be the equal responsibility on women to the responsibility socially that men have.
Well, I think that women who aren't married or just don't have kids yet, I still think that they have a responsibility to give value to the world in other ways.
What are those ways? I'm curious.
For instance, my job right now is working full-time in the pro-life movement. And I think that's something that I've been called into.
So that's still based around motherhood, though.
Wait, I have a quick question on that. If your husband said, hey, this advocacy that you're doing is fantastic, but, you want to have kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he said, well, once you start having kids, got to cut that out. I'm a pro-life husband, whatever. But your work in that organization must cease. Do you listen to him?
I would if he absolutely made that decision, but no, my husband supports me continuing my work when we do have kids because I love what I do and it's great.
Well, that's important work.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that women are I believe that you're supposed to live as you're not going to get married, and because some people aren't called to be married, and so I'm going to live in that way. But then let's say I do get married.
Well, hang on. I'm really sorry to cut you off. I don't mean to do this. The only reason I'm doing it is because This is a very specific question, which is not tailored to you individually as people, as the person. So I'm not asking you,
Oh, I
the
see what you're
individual,
saying.
this
Okay,
question.
yeah.
So I'm going to repeat the question. Men's job in society is to procure resources, refine resources, distribute resources. Every single job skill that you look at will provide this for you, right? 95%, 96% in many cases, 97%. Things like electricians, things like oil rig operators, things like construction workers, right? The people who go out and actually procure resources, basically all men, almost all of them. Seems to be what their social and societal role is. That is the case. They are to protect society and provide resources on behalf of women and children in society. What is the equal social duty that women have to that?
I think caretakers and nurturers, whether that's in their communities and the people that they're around in their churches, and then for those men.
Okay.
Quick answers if we can.
I mean, I guess I didn't really grow up in a nuclear family, so I don't really, like, I'm just, this is...
It has nothing to do with you.
Okay, yeah.
Prescriptively, what do you think socially women?
I guess they
have as a
could.
duty
I did
on par with
babysit when I was younger, so I would say that, yeah, I guess they could nurture my mom. Yeah, it has nothing to do with me, so never mind. That wouldn't pertain. But
Okay.
yeah.
So again, back to motherhood nurturing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Having kids and making sure that they're raised properly with a good moral foundation, and then they're also educated properly because the education
Got it.
system is.
Next.
Providing relief and nurturing and stuff.
Got it.
We prepare the
Makes
men
sense
for war.
to me. Next.
Yeah, well said. I think an ideal society has nuclear families everywhere. So fostering a nuclear family, raising your daughter up, and the way that we have described women need to be, and raising your son up in the way that you described men need to be, would be.
So then we essentially have universal agreement almost on this panel that the social obligation for women is based around motherhood and raising the next generation of children, in some way participating towards that. That seems to be the social obligation that you universally agree on. However, here's the problem. In all Western nations, and almost all nations in fact, but the West particularly, we are not at reproductive rates to replace our society at all. We are under replacement across the board, which means that women are failing in this social duty of both reproduction and the assistance towards the ends of reproduction, which, by the way, all of you on this panel agreed is the social equal of what men are providing for you. However, men are upholding their end, which is the procurement, refinement, distribution of resources, and protection of society. So the question boils down to this. Since this is the case, what do you think should be done that's not based around, well, actually, we'll just make it easy. What do you think should be done so that women go back to this idea of role of reproduction in society and this social role of being matrons and raising the next generation, since you think that's the social duty? Go ahead.
So I actually had a video. I don't know if you've seen this interview ever, but U2, Bono is very political, and he did an interview, I think a couple years ago, and it said, America is a very young country and it hasn't developed its structure quite yet. And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but this interview is online, and he talks about how America is so young that it's going to eventually, within the next 100 years, develop its that type of a structure, like its family structure, its political, each country is, every country.
But this issue, the reproduction issue, is in the entirety of all Western nations, regardless of age.
Of the United States, though, right? United States?
All of them, including the United States.
Okay, do you...
But there's other nations so
have been longer?
The United States, my understanding is the United States.
It's young.
Is actually the oldest current established nation with its original established foundational constitution. It's the oldest one that exists currently.
I see the Pilgrim vibes kind of coming back.
Now, other nations, which you could argue are
China.
much older, like England or the UK, things like this, sure. but they suffer from the same reproduction crisis.
Really, I know Japan, yeah, and
All of them.
I think there's just I mean, I have a personal opinion about Japan in a sense where I feel like there's a lot of shame in for the man to carry a lot of the the how do I say it, financial and responsibilities, and if anything happens, then it's dishonor to him. And
how do you assist? So why won't women fulfill their social roles?
Why won't women fulfill their social roles?
Yeah, their social roles of reproducing, having the next generation, and assisting with that, which is what all you agreed, is the social role that women have if men are going to be providing all of this for them.
I think there's a communication issue, like between not between like me and you or anything, but there's a communication issue between men and women. Like I think that and this is just, I've taken polls from my own life and also other situations and scenarios that I've heard of and seen just over the course of my 32 years. I think that the problem is like the whole ghosting thing, that shouldn't even happen. That's going to kill a culture. Same thing with cancel culture. That's going to kill a culture. You got to, if you don't want to talk to somebody no more, you need to tell them why. Unless it was a super violent reason, you can bail, sure, but you got to tell them why so then they can at least utilize that reason for the next person. Why are you going to hoard that information from them?
So it's men's fault? Or?
No, it's both faults.
Oh, it's both.
They both, the cancel culture needs to stop, and so does ghosting. Both of them. That's going to kill killing culture.
How is that going to assist with the reproduction?
Because then people will be more honest. Like, hey, I didn't really like you because you're kind of hairy, or you're kind of you're kind of masculine or something. And then I would remember that stuff because mostly dudes would just ghost me and then never tell me what was wrong. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, when I change, they hit me up and then they want to be with me, and I'm like, what? Okay, so what was wrong with me? Oh, it was just I don't know. And I'm like, no, you tell me what was wrong with me. And you should have told me then so I could have utilized that information and used it in my next relationship.
It's men's fault.
No. It's men's fault in my scenario, but I'm sure, I mean, for me, as of in the recent, at least, because I had a problem with ghosting for a very long time, so I always told people this was just something in my mechanisms that I used myself. In the past 7 years, I always told people why I stopped talking to them. Absolutely, 100%.
So you think that the reproduction crisis will be solved if people stop ghosting?
It would be helped. It wouldn't be solved, but it would be helped. Because then people could figure out what was actually wrong with them according to other people, as opposed to people just being like, oh, I'm going to bail out, whatever. I'll just find a new one. And it's like, no, tell somebody what's wrong so they can fix the problem. And if they ain't going to do it with you, they're going to do it with the next person.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Chair one, what do you think? We'll go around real quick. What if the social obligation is of women to reproduce and assist with reproduction, which all of you agreed is their role, why do you think they're failing in that obligation?
Honestly, I'm super agreeing. Honestly, if there was, give me 1 second.
Okay, Chair two.
Bruh. I wouldn't say this is something that specifically comes down to traditional women aren't doing their jobs. I feel like it's a problem all over the world in some countries a lot worse than the U.S. I think a lot of it comes down to economic stability. A lot of families don't feel comfortable with being able to provide for a large amount of kids. College tuition is expensive. While I do believe, people want that. Yeah, I think everybody wants that. They just want to have a sense of security.
Can you explain why it is the poor have more kids than the rich and the middle class then, if it's about money?
I think that's a question for perhaps you.
Sure. No, I actually agree that it's not a failure of women necessarily, because it takes two to create a child. Mm-hmm. Women themselves cannot go and create a child on their own. And obviously, as someone who works in pro-life activism, financial instability is a primary reason why people are getting abortions. Another reason is oftentimes the baby's father doesn't want a child. A lot of the women I've worked with seeking abortions are there because the baby's father is dragging them there, because men aren't willing to be responsible fathers either. So it's both. It's men and women. I think that definitely our culture.
Well, even if you compensated for abortions yearly, it wouldn't solve the reproduction crisis. Not even close.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Even if you were to compensate for the abortions yearly, it still would not solve the reproduction crisis.
Right. I mean, it would help, but no, I think the reasons people are getting abortions
would
is
help,
the same.
I agree.
Yeah, it's the same reasons though, is financial instability and I also do think there's a problem with people don't value motherhood and feminism, or what people consider feminism now. I guess what modern day feminism has become is telling women that motherhood is less of an important role than being a CEO or whatever, and that's not true. Motherhood is one of the most crucial
What incentive do
things.
men have to marry women who won't submit, though? And on top of that, here's what actually causes it: the reproduction crisis. There's actually just really one major correlation which causes it, is that women take their reproductive years, their 20s, which is their primary reproductive years, and they go to college in their 20s, and they don't start having families until they're about, on average, now in the U.S., 28 years old before they start. But a lot of them are starting in their 30s. Most marriages now are starting in their 30s. Because of this, women have less children, significantly less children. So actually, it seems to me that if you wanted to solve the problem of having your entire nation completely replaced by immigrants or people who aren't from your nation, that the way that you could solve this is by having some sort of propaganda campaign at the national level to glorify the family and not to glorify women going to college, which seems to be a complete and total waste of what women's social obligation is, which is having children and bringing up the next generation of society.
Andrew, I have a question. So what do you think about parents, like, because they exist out there. I'm just going to say they exist, seen them. What do you think about parents that don't want their kids to have kids, that they just want to be the parent forever? They don't ever want to be a grandparent. They don't ever want the identity of a grandparent. They don't ever want to get old. What do you think about those parents? Because there are those parents out there.
Well, hold on. I'd actually prefer if the panel responds to Andrew's point that he just. It's okay. Maybe later we can get into it.
Here was the point. If you stave off in their 20s, if women were to stave off in their 20s, and here's how we know this, because we can look at reproduction rates, especially since the 1800s, where they've been dropping like a rock, right? And we can see that when women were getting married younger, we were having many more children because of multiple reasons. Primary one is they have more childbearing years. The second is the children tend to be much healthier. 3, the mother tends to be able to recover much better. So any woman will tell you who's had a child in their 20s that it was a breeze in comparison to when they had one in their 30s, or especially in their 40s, right? Which is like, they can be god-awful on their body at that point. So it seems that what we're doing is we're taking the smartest women who should be at home raising the next generation and telling them instead that they should be going to college and sacrificing their childbearing years in order to get a job, which, by the way, the types of jobs that they're getting, there's basically only 3 categories. None of them are getting jobs in STEM.
So to delay motherhood.
In psychology, and they're getting degrees in nursing, and they're getting degrees in sociology. That's mainly what they're getting degrees in. They're basically not doing anything STEM-wise, and half of them or more don't even work in the very fields they got a degree in. So this seems backwards to me, right? Doesn't that seem backwards to everybody?